Welcome, survivors, burnout community, and those just interested. It's Kelly Buboltz, trainer, author, speaker, and your burnout prevention mentor. Burnout is not taboo. It's our reality in this chaotic, fast-paced world. But we're not going to let it drive the narrative to our stories. We're going to do something about it. So let's dig in. All right, today's Workforce Energy Management series is focused on boss burnout and how you're not only depleting yourself, but you're depleting your team. That energy goes outward, and we know that. When we don't feel good, people kind of suck more. And for my own journey, I didn't even realize boss burnout was a thing. I didn't even realize burnout was a thing until I was in that boss burnout. I was climbing the ladder. Things were going great. I was getting the big bonuses. People were following me naturally. But then suddenly, it just became a drag. I would sit in the parking lot not wanting to go in. I didn't want to go into the next meeting on my calendar. I would go home and just be completely drained, have no energy left for my family. And then that started to spill over even more into my team. Then they would want more decisions, and I just wanted to be left alone. They would want some answers, and I didn't want one more distraction. It felt like there was always a line out my door. And you can see the doom and gloom that kind of came into my days. So I had to figure out what is going on, what is contributing to this, and then how do we move forward? Because that chaos is not going to disappear. Stress has been here. Stress will always be. So that's what we're going to break down today is what is going on in the background? What are the patterns of behavior that are driving this boss burnout so we can begin to protect our energy? Now, let's go through the first thing that I was seeing when I started to dig into this. Work is very focused on productivity and time management. It's more focused on calendars than capacity. So that was my first recognition, is that you have to be very intentional about your days, which we're going to go over in the next 15 to 20 minutes. I also had to realize that I wasn't misperforming or underperforming. I was depleted. There's a difference, right? There's a difference if you don't know what you're doing, a competency thing, if you are experimenting like you've never done it before, and then you just don't have anything left. And I think understanding that as a leader, as a boss, is going to be important, because one area, such as competency, or you're experimenting with something, is a learning curve, right? You can get there. You just need to go explore a little bit and learn some new things. The other, you can't just push through. You're making it way worse. And this is where I was living, is in that push through. And I didn't realize I'm depleted. And so it slowly ate away at me, my energy. My physical and cognitive abilities got even worse. I used to be on things, right? I used to be the person that knew people, knew things. And I just couldn't even figure out what is going on in this meeting right now. What just happened? Am I doing this? Are you doing this? Things just got confusing. And again, that's that cognitive drain that we're talking about and going to break down more, that started to drain those days. And simple decisions became hard decisions. And basic conversations were just exhausting. So that was some things that I had to recognize, is that there are lines between what you know and depletion. What you don't know, and where you actually need to get energy back. So we're going to talk about the energy patterns behind this, not productivity, not adding more, because that's really what's going on behind this boss burnout. Now, let's talk about some things that are going on behind the scenes of bosses specifically. So we're talking about leaders, people who lead people. And there's 3 ripple effects that I saw, not only in my journey, but as I do leadership programs with other leaders, the things that they're navigating. And that's the 360 effect. You're navigating how you show up as a leader. What type of leader do you want to be? You're leading across, right? You're leading your peers and that conflict that's coming up. When do you push? When do you step back? You're leading upward, which is one of the more difficult things. It takes time. It takes gaining that confidence of when you should speak up and when you should maybe just leave it alone. And then, of course, downward. So out of these 4, speaking to leaders, the easiest is actually downward, right? Because you are the leader, you have the title. And so there's that natural authority that comes into place. Where it gets difficult is upward, across to your peers, and unfortunately some self-awareness with ourselves. That's probably the hardest level there. And so there's some ripple effects happening across these four. The first ripple effect that you are seeing that becomes a pattern of energy drain is the emotional leakage of others and no recovery time after that. Have you ever had a time where someone comes to you with a quick question and now you're aware of a problem that has nothing to do with you? It has nothing to do with your team or department, but you know it's happening. That's energy, that's that emotional leakage that is now in your backpack. Or you hear about something that another leader did on your team, like a peer. So we're talking about the cross people now. And they mishandled it, right? They treated people poorly or they made a bad decision. And now you're sitting here again with that weight, that emotional leakage from what that other leader did. And now maybe you either have to clean it up or you have to watch what happens from the ripple effect of that. So that's the first ripple effect that I'm seeing in boss burnout is the emotional leakage across these four. Downward, the things going on with your employees, that's leaking into you. Upward, that's leaking onto you, especially for middle managers. And then across, that's leaking back to you. So that's really draining the energy. And then you also don't get recovery time after. You have to still show up for that meeting, get onto that call, talk to your employee and put on a fake smile. So you don't get any good recovery time. And it becomes that like cognitive whiplash that we talk about. The second thing that I'm seeing in the ripple effects of when a boss's energy is drained and it just continues out from there is decision fatigue. So say people don't want to make a decision. There's so much change going on right now. It kind of gets bogged down and you don't want to make the decision either. And so either you're going to have to push through, right? That depletion, we're pushing it, or you're going to pass that on to your team to make a decision when maybe it shouldn't be their decision. So that decision fatigue ripple effect from others to you or you out to your team is also causing the energy drain. And then the third one is accountability. This comes in all shapes and forms. It's different between small businesses and larger businesses that I work with that are growing. It's different between industries such as hospitality versus manufacturing or banking versus insurance. It all depends on the environment that they're in. But accountability, again, across these four is causing the energy drain. And it's lack of accountability. It's lack of roles and the clarity around that. It's lack of what are we actually supposed to be working on, which I'm going to get into in a little bit moment. So a boss is absorbing all this energy drain, but they're also putting it back out to their team because again the leader energy has a ripple effect out to their team. When leaders have a bad day, it's hard to keep that in, right? So your team is absorbing that energy, and this is where it's super important to take time to work on this because leaders have that ripple effect. If you have one employee who is disgruntled, disengaged, there might be a little bit of a ripple, a couple of ripples out from that rock crash that they're doing, the drama or gossip that they're doing. You have a key employee that is causing some issues because their energy is drained and they're depleted. Bigger ripple effects. But you have a leader. So that's team energy. That's the decision making, that's the strategy, that's performance management. That's going to have some huge ripple effects. And so the team and those around them are absorbing that energy. Now, when we talk about burnout in the workforce, it seems like we're always talking about workload. I even talk about workflow when I work with clients. Those are some areas that need to be fixed. But it's really the patterns behind it and how to break it down that is draining the energy. And I'm going to go through a couple leadership burnout patterns that are happening so you can start to recognize where you're going to shift. And then we're going to talk about 3 steps to get out of that. So let's look at some of the symptoms inside burnout to recognize maybe where your pattern is. So burnout is a symptom. It is a signal of deeper dysfunctions within operations and work cultures. So as you can see in this graph, we have a couple different things going on in the background, some root causes: workload imbalance, poor communication, lack of role clarity, like we were talking about, team distrust, absence of recovery time. right? We're moving from one thing to the next, not even getting a second to think. Misaligned cultures. And then that lack of autonomy, which goes into that over controlling when there's too much chaos. So when we break down leader burnout, what these root causes are going into, what the leader is specifically doing is over functioning. When they start to see chaos, there's a time to step in, and then there's this time to step back and really resolve what's going on. For example, when someone comes to your office and asks a question, as a leader, you automatically want to respond because it's faster, because you know it's going to be done right or the way that you want it done, and you know it's going to be done on time, right? Because you're working through it by giving them the answer right away. But what we're doing is now we're not delegating. Okay, do you see the lack of autonomy that just came out? What we're doing is you just did the job. Lack of role clarity. What you're doing is poor communication because you don't believe that they're competent or capable to do so. And as leaders, when you are over capacity or you're depleted, it's easy for you in your mind to just do the work, just give the answer. But people are smarter than you think. They're more capable than what they look like. And so asking a few questions before you tell them if they don't have the right answer is going to guide you more to that delegation. It's going to give them autonomy. That's good communication. It's back and forth. Both people own that. It's establishing role clarity that they own that. And you're just guiding them. You're just coaching them. You're there to remove the hurdles. You're there to guide the compass, the sense of direction forward. You're not there to do all their work. And a story I like to tell in programs is there was a small business that I was working with. It was only a 20-person team. And I was brought in because they were being micromanaged. The team was not getting along. And the owner was stepping in way too much. They were micromanaging everything. There was an autonomy. There was poor communication because the owner knew everything and not the team who was supposed to be executing it. And so I asked him and some of the other leaders that were doing this, and I said, what is their purpose here? What is their value? And they spew out the value that's on the job description, but not so much what's actually being executed. And I said, well, I give you 60 days. If they're not doing that work, then there's no purpose for them to be there. And they're like, whoa, Kelly. No, we're family here. We don't terminate anyone. And I said, but you're doing their job. Not only is that causing you boss burnout, overload, but it's very demeaning to the people actually doing the work. And you're suffocating yourself, the creativity and innovation that could be happening because it's only one or two brains doing all the work. So let's just say in 60 days, the team was able to gain autonomy, get some more of that trust back to the people who should be executing the work. And they came up with some great creative ideas to get them out of this funk state that they were in. But sometimes you got to pause and say, where am I over functioning? And I'm actually causing the dysfunction within my team. So as a leader, make sure that you are giving intentional time to really back up and reflect on that, either with yourself, with your peers, that's upward, with your peers across, with your own bosses upward, or with your team. Just ask the question, where am I over functioning and need to step back? And let them think about that and give you some feedback. The second thing that you're going to see in these burnout symptoms as a leader burnout behavior pattern going on in the background that is fully in our control is conflict avoidance. Pretty much in every leadership program that I've done over the last couple of years, we have had some kind of session or discussion on conflict avoidance. As a middle person, right, you are under a company usually, and then you are leading employees. You are in the middle, which means you got to be the messenger sometimes. You can't control the variables in play. You can't control some of those decisions that have already been made, and you just have to delegate it or get it to be executed and completed. And that can get dicey, right? There's a lot of conflict there, and you can't just say, because I said so. You can't just say, that's the way it is. People want to know a reason. They want to know the why behind it. So to avoid some of these burnout symptom root causes, you're going to have to understand what is the why, like what are we striving towards, and understand why we can't do certain things that they want to do. And the more information and clarity you can bring to that and being transparent, the more that people are going to get aligned to where you want to go. There were some decisions I had to make as a leader that I did not agree with. I worked in human resources, so that's the people role. I was the only people role. I had some people on my team, but in those meetings where we were making big decisions, I was the only one speaking on behalf of the people. Everyone else is speaking on behalf of operations, the customers, vendors, people that pay us. And so you put up the good fight, but at the end of the day, the end decision is the decision. So now I have to go back to other people and tell them no, or we can't do that, but we can do this. And that's a sticky place to be. So getting really good at conflict on how to approach it, how to prep for it, how to actually execute it in the conversation, mediating that conversation, and then releasing it, not carrying it on for days, for months, for years is going to be important. But again, we dig into that a lot more in programs specific to clients, industries, and environments, because a little customization in conflict goes a long way. Now, the third pattern that I'm seeing that's contributing to a lot of these symptoms and root causes is reactive urgency. I had a leadership group recently, and I said, okay, let me take everything off your plate. Let me pull everything off. I want you to pick one thing you want to work on right now that you would be passionate about, that you think would have a big impact on your team. What would that be? Not one person could answer that. I had 13 middle managers, so pretty high up there on impact on a team, and they couldn't tell me what they would want to lead their team on if they had time, if they had a budget, if they had room to lead them somewhere. And so I want us to back up a moment in our meetings, in our performance management, in some of these strategy conversations, and ask, what are we doing? And that might be a really blunt, and that's how I say it as a third-party consultant sometimes, is what are we doing? Because we keep doing more, but is it of value? Is it of impact? And sometimes we're just always so urgent to respond that we don't even know where we're going. Everyone's kind of lost in the woods on their own path. So when we get back to this leadership compass of being really aligned to where we want to go, you can answer that. And it might change throughout the year. That's adaptability. We're building that agility in today's changing world. So getting rid of constant distractions, really aligning our meetings to where we want to go, and the performance and actions of all the team is going to help that. So that's the three patterns I'm seeing that is contributing to these root causes, and you're seeing them as a burnout symptom, is overfunctioning, right? Where are you overfunctioning? Stepping up when you should be stepping back. Conflict avoidance. Are you working on healthy conflict? And that can be done through leadership coaching or leadership programs, but getting really good at conflict conversations gets a lot of that dust out of the rooms, those elephants in the rooms, and we can start to get toward the things that we need to work on and the conversations we need to have. So conflict avoidance. And the third one was reactive. Everything's an urgency, and that's why we're in this survivorship mode. So really understanding where you're going, removing the waste and the distractions is going to guide you forward. Now, let's go through the 3 steps. So when we leave programs, we're doing like 6 to 8 sessions at a time, and we only have 20-ish minutes together right now. So let me give you some practical tips, some steps to protect your energy so that you can begin to navigate these in a moment here, a conversation there, a decision tomorrow, a take my lunch today type of moment. So the first step you're going to want to do is, where are you leading from? Where do you want to lead from? Again, if I ask you that question, what type of energy are you putting out there to your team? Well, you could probably answer that. But the harder question is, what type of energy do you want to put out? So I'm creative. I love change. And in that, sometimes I actually leave some of my team behind because I'm moving too fast. I'm losing them along the way. So how I want to lead is, I want to innovate, but I want to make sure that everyone's along for this adventure. So I need to change how I do some of my actions, how I do some of my meetings, how I do my strategy throughout the year, how I'm interacting with them so that they have enough information to make decisions at a pace that I can also feel comfortable with. So step one is, where do you lead from? That self-awareness. Are you leading from depletion? Okay, we need to work on some capacity things with you. Are you leading from fight, flight, or freeze? Or that survivorship mode, always urgent and reactive? All right, let's work on intentional days. Taking some time to really focus on your calendar slots, blocking off from people and distractions. Or do you feel pretty good about your leadership energy? All right, well, how can we make that a ripple effect, right? How can we make sure that other people feel excited to make decisions and they're not carrying that emotional leakage, and they feel comfortable with giving accountability and receiving accountability feedback? So where do you lead from? That's step one, giving time to that. Step two is shift from doing to directing. This is a difficult transition and transformation for all levels of leadership. Emerging leaders and supervisors are stuck in the trenches. They don't have time to really manage people. They're still doing a full-time operational job executing the work. Middle managers are, again, stuck in the middle doing that messaging. And when someone is out or they need to cover because of a new hire training or turnover transition, guess what? Now they're stuck back in Tasker. Or they got promoted from a job and they never actually released the previous tasks. And that not only emotional load, but that workload. So, and then strategic, that's a whole other conversation about carrying the weight of the company, the decisions made, and then having that trust to release for execution to the rest of the team. So doing to directing. Let's talk about that overfunctioning. Where do you need to step back? Where do people need to be trained? They need to know where resources are, or they need to have some conversations with some other people to learn the process flow, learn the product a little bit more so that you can release some of that workload. Right now, we are holding things so tight as leaders because we want to make sure it's done and it's done right. But in the process, we're depleting ourselves. So that is 100% in your control, is moving from doing to directing. And just be very intentional about what are those steps. So say Jimmy and John need to take over this task that you constantly have to do, and really it should be their job through role clarity. Okay, let's set up some training sessions to sit with them. Let's have some follow-up sessions so that they know that you're still a resource if things go a little haywire. And then guess what? You get to release that task. You're not the doer anymore. You get to direct and focus on the hurdles and the challenges of the team versus the tasker. The third one that we're going to talk about is the third step is, yeah, you took step one, the self-awareness. Yeah, you took step two, doer to director, but you have that compass and sense of direction now. Where do you want to go? What boundaries do you want to set? Does that mean when you have asks of you and people who are constantly requesting more work, how do you redirect them? Do you say things like, oh, can we revisit that tomorrow? I'm in the middle of something today. Hey, our load or our priorities are a little different this quarter. Can we revisit that next quarter? What are you going to say? What boundaries are you going to set so that you can continue this journey? Boss burnout happens over time. You push through another week, you push through another quarter, and suddenly your days just seem different. You've lost that passion. You've drained all the energy that's left that you don't want to do it anymore. Unfortunately, I'm having more conversations with leaders who don't want to lead anymore than leaders who want to lead. I think the common phrase that I hear is, why would I want to do more with less? And so we want to make sure we have that compass and sense of direction so that we can maintain this energy, not only for ourselves, but what we put out to our team after we take those first two steps. Now, the biggest message behind boss burnout that I have learned myself as I've crawled my way out of the darkness of burnout, and how do you do this in such a busy, changing world? The workforce is changing, products are changing, processes are changing. How do you keep up? It's about becoming an aligned leader so that whatever comes your way and changes hits you and bounces right off. You know how to navigate that change, and if you don't know how, you have energy enough to figure it out. And when you become more of that aligned leader, those behavioral patterns that we just addressed this session is going to be in a healthy way. instead of a push through, this is not super sustainable way. We're focusing on long-term energy management strategy, not short-term time management and calendar slots. And I think when you can show up for yourself and be in a really good place, how are you going to lead? How are you going to direct your team in a way that makes them feel competent and capable and bringing value? And how are you going to set those sense of direction and those boundaries to maintain this journey? I think when you can do that, you can really amplify your team because you're in a good spot. We've all had those leaders that has completely overreacted to even a small change, right? And you feel it. You feel it in the room. You don't even want to be on that team anymore. And then we've all had leaders where, yes, it's chaotic. Yes, the circumstances are great. And they just handle it with ease. And at the core, I can tell, man, they've done the work. They have managed their energy. They know what type of leader they want to be. And that energy is oozing out of them to take that chaos into calm along for their team. So my question for you is, what type of leader do you want to be? What type of behaviors and patterns are you seeing in your own actions that are leaking out, are rippling out to your team? And in that self-awareness, you can begin this leadership compass journey. If we haven't already connected, feel free to go to my website or check out the resources in the link to discover what does engaging this energy with your team, with yourself look like. How do you begin to shift these behaviors to prevent boss burnout?
I know you're not lazy. Most people in burnout are high performers, those serving others before themselves. Don't discount this step today, the action in which you focus on your self-growth. Piecing together the puzzle is half the journey. Rediscovering yourself, energy, and establishing new habits is the other. Do not underestimate the untapped inner strength inside you. Explore more resources on my website to move from zombie mode back to liveliness. See you soon.